Hey everybody, welcome to BK Live. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I'm Brian Vines. We're gonna get through this next hour. Got a lot of great stories for you. We're gonna start at the top with a little bit of politics. In his nearly 2 years occupying the mayor's office, Bill de Blasio has had his share of political battles. There were the horse carriages in Central Park, charter schools, the back and forth with the police union, and pretty much any time he's in the room with Governor Cuomo. But the mayor may be in for the battle of his political life as his signature vision for the future of the city. His affordable housing plan faces continued criticism and challenges. I'll discuss it with two reporters who've been on the story. And then on to Brownsville Brilliance. It's a special report premiering today focusing on Mott Hall Bridges Academy and some of the great strides being led by their founding principal, Nadia Lopez. Her education philosophy has placed the Brownsville School and her scholars in the national spotlight, and later on we'll learn why and how. And if you follow football, then you know the Denver Broncos just won the Super Bowl because its defense is one of the greatest in the history of the game, or so I'm told. Right up there with the 46th defense of the 1985 championship Chicago Bears. But some of that toughness came straight out of Brooklyn with middle linebacker Otis Wilson. We were there recently when he returned to his alma mater, Thomas Jefferson High School, coincidentally, also in Brownsville. Then Michael Bellamy will introduce us to boxer-turned-actor Michael Bent, a man who was heavyweight champ and then played one in the movies. And then we'll hear from the poet Angel Nafis, host of the quarterly Greenlight Brooklyn Poetry Salon. But even poets need a roof over their heads. So first, the mayor and his struggle to build affordable housing.
I needed sunshine in my day, something to wash away my pain. I saw a very gentle side of him that took my heart and made it sing. I wish he'd run away and hide with me. Love hurts so much more than it seems. There was one thing I did not show. I love a man who doesn't know. I wonder if I ever see the day, will I ever find the words to say I love you? And will he turn around, walk away? Will he leave or will he stay? If I tell him, could it be the one who was in my dream? Could it be the one sent down for me? There was one thing I did not show, baby. I love a man who doesn't know.
All right, so we're going to get into the mayor's affordable housing plan, but first we thought we'd set you up with a little bit of a context for the thing. It's the housing plan, 5 boroughs for the next 10 years. Our first slide here, we're going to be talking about New York is a renter's market. Renters make up 2/3 of the roughly 3 million households in New York City. That's a whole lot of renters. And in Brooklyn, the average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment at the end of last year was just below $3,000 at $2,898. That doesn't include utilities, if you were wondering, by the way. And then 42% of renters in New York City are rent burdened, meaning that they pay about 30% worth of their income towards their housing. And of that number, half of those folks who are rent burdened have been considered severely rent burdened, meaning that they pay 50% of their income. Yes, that is half of their income goes towards just paying the rent. Moving on. Looking at de Blasio's housing plan was laid out a 10-year timeline to build or preserve 200,000 units of affordable housing, and that's going to be to the tune of about $41 billion. So right now we're just sort of at the beginning of that thing, and the housing plan is moving along. To the third, we'll show you just how much progress they're making. So far, 40,000 apartments have been financed since the mayor took office. And just recently, the mayor doubled the budget for the Housing Preservation Development Department here in New York to about $7.5 billion and kicked in another $1 billion for infrastructure for growing neighborhoods, things like parks and paving and schools and all those things that make neighborhoods livable. At the end of 2015, about 21,000 units had been financed to some tune of about $600 million. So to sum it all up, the de Blasio plan is going to be about 10 years worth. There's an ambitious goal there, and he's running into a little bit of resistance right now, the least of which came from community boards. But since the mayor unveiled his affordable housing plan in the spring of 2014, to much fanfare, it's come under much scrutiny and may very well be on its last leg. Or is it? Danielle Tcholakian, a reporter from DNA Info New York, has been on the story. Thanks for being here, Danielle.
Thank you.
And our friend Ben Max is also back. You may remember that Ben is the executive editor at the Gotham Gazette. Thank you for being here again, Ben. So the community boards at the first blush said, okay, we're not really for this. And it was sort of routinely trounced at that level, although it was sort of an advisory thing. They don't really have a supervisory role. They just get to kick in. But has the tune changed at all?
Well, Danielle's a community board expert, so I'll let her fill everything in
why
on
are
the
you taking up her time?
Well, but I wanted to sort of frame things first.
Yeah.
One of the key things here that I think a lot of people aren't understanding, and you guys have a great presentation of it, is that this affordable housing plan is really vast. And the thing that's been going in front of the community boards recently are these zoning changes to the citywide zoning code that are key to the plan, but they're not all of the plan.
Okay.
And so I think that sometimes people are mistaken right now when they see some of the news or make some assumptions that what's happening now is the whole plan, and it's not.
It's really the first.
They're talking about changing the zoning rules around the city, which are very important.
So the community boards are saying no, but to some of those points about the zoning, they are seeking variances to build buildings higher where buildings have traditionally been lower. There's some parking things that are in the mix as well. Has there been sort of an overarching theme to why community boards have been rejecting the plan?
I think the fundamental complaint is that they weren't brought in earlier in developing the plan. Community boards like to be involved in developing processes as the voice of the community, and I think they had high hopes with Mayor de Blasio as somebody who frames himself as being community-minded, right? And while it's easy to dismiss community boards as not having really any clout, which de Blasio did, they actually do have a fair amount of influence with the local council members.
All right, so looking at that sort of landscape right now, one of the things that the mayor has sort of been running into the resistance is the inclusionary zones and mandatory inclusionary zones versus inclusionary zones. Ben, give us the primer on what those are.
Well, basically, they're trying to push through for the first time mandatory inclusionary housing, which means that if you're a developer and you want to change a plot of land to build housing, you have to include affordable units with new market rate units. And that hasn't been done before, and it's being praised quite a bit, especially in concept. Some of the issue where the community boards and many city council members have pushed back is, what are the levels of affordability on those apartments that are deemed affordable, and how deep do they go to people making lower incomes in the city, who again are the people that de Blasio came into office championing?
So one of the things that is used to sort of come up with these numbers is this AMI number. And last year we sort of did a whole segment on AMIs and what truly neighborhood people make without factoring in this whole Westchester County and things that throw off the numbers. So looking at these AMIs, there's a building across the street that's sort of, they're saying, if you make between $26,000 and $200,000, we can have a subsidized apartment for you. How are these AMIs rolling out over the various boroughs?
In mandatory inclusionary housing, the lowest target AMI that they're using is an average of 60%. A lot of people are saying that it needs to go as low as 30%, especially in lower income neighborhoods where there's a fear that people will be pushed out. Vicky Bean at a recent council hearing made a point of highlighting the word average and trying to say, you know, when we set the average at 60%, that means that a developer could do some apartments at 40% and some at 80%.
Right. So you get that income diversity in the unit.
Right. The whole idea being inclusionary means multiple levels of income.
So giving everybody a break, not just the lowest of the low, is the sort of prevailing thought from Vicky Bean there.
Right, and also using higher income people essentially to subsidize lower income people.
So Ben, earlier you spoke about the sort of community involvement and folks wanting to be in and felt like they'd sort of been shut out. But Council Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito did a thing in her district where people have really been on it. And they have this sort of ambitious vision and plan for how they want their community in East Harlem, which is pretty far down the line as far as the development plan. East New York is sort of the first blush. But what did those folks do up in East Harlem?
Yeah, we just did a story about this because they're supposed to release their proposal this week, and who knows, you know, if it'll actually come out this week, it could be next week. But in East Harlem, they wanted to get out ahead of this community planning process. So they did their own thing under the direction of the speaker and other community stakeholders, and they are on the verge of releasing a plan that says, if you're going to rezone this neighborhood, we want to make sure that there's plans for not only affordable housing, but job training at NYCHA, schools, transportation, the whole thing that a community plan would entail. And that's another piece of this big housing plan that, again, is getting a little bit missed right now because we're so focused on these zoning changes. Right. These zoning changes are for the whole city. Then the city comes in with these neighborhood by neighborhood plans. East New York, you mentioned, is the first. Very controversial. They did not have a community planning process ahead of the administration's process. So East Harlem was trying to learn from that experience and get out ahead of it. Right.
They wanted to be proactive instead of reactionary, I believe the council speaker said. So
it helps to have the council speaker as your local council
member. It ain't bad to
right?
have the speaker. But it's not all bad because the AARP 1199 SEIU, they've come out for this plan, and I know you just had a great story recently about seniors really advocating for their part in this plan in housing.
Right, well, so the plan that is most beneficial to seniors is zoning for quality and affordability. And that
ZQA. That you might have heard about in this alphabet soup.
Exactly. And that is meant to change the physical requirements for construction in order to make it more possible to build senior housing. So in a lot of places that means increasing the height of buildings so that the buildings can have elevators because seniors need elevators. Right. And so the AARP is obviously very much in favor of this. Now, the council right now has its chance to make changes to the plan, and a lot of what they indicated at a recent hearing was that they wanted to add in community board review or a board of...
with buildings getting higher, there were some people who were concerned about the sort of bedroom quality of their communities and not have this
they refer to it as
upzoning.
neighborhood character.
Right. Neighborhood character, yes, that's the code word. So there was also some back and forth about the 30-year plan where these senior homes would sort of be locked in for 30 years, but then the deputy mayor saying, but we're going to be very tough with them to make sure after those 30 years that it's going to be in their best interest. So is anyone biting on that?
Well, I believe she said we are going to fight like a wildcat, not to let them out of our program. So the way she plans on doing that is to say, you know, you only have to make this unit affordable for 30 years, but when 30 years is over, you still can't use it for anything but senior housing. So essentially, come 29 years, the city's going to come to the developer and say, hey, time to re-up in our program, and the developer can't really say no in Vicky Bean's eyes, because what else are they going to use? They're not going to leave the unit empty, she says.
Yeah.
and there's not a huge market, right, for luxury, you know, high market rate senior housing.
Yeah.
You know, so they're trying to hedge their bets there, but they also, you know, they say that legally they can't, they're under certain constraints, and some of that is being investigated and looked into, I think. But, you know, these plans are, by most accounts, if not all, fairly revolutionary and some of the strongest in the country, so there's not necessarily a lot of precedent for people to look around at.
Yeah, so why is this becoming noisy now? If we had the announcement back in 2014, a lot of people who don't live in East New York or on the front lines may have sort of let it recede to the back of their minds. Why is it coming forward now, you think, Ben?
Well, this is where the planning process and the ULURP process, the land use review process, is now going forward with the two citywide zoning changes, the MIH and the ZQA, which we've gone through a bit.
Yeah.
So that's why it's really come to the fore, is that it went through the community boards who had a lot of concerns. It went through the borough boards. Now it's going through the council. And so that, these two zoning changes are front and center, not to mention other aspects of the housing plan, including the 421A tax program that the city relies on from Albany to allow developers to be free of property taxes for many years for other affordable housing units.
Right. So who's standing with the mayor on this? We've just heard a lot of voices, aside from some seniors maybe on the other side. Who can he count on in his column?
Well, some of his allies actually recently formed a 501c4, I believe it's called, which is essentially like a super PAC. Where they can raise money without having to account for where the money comes from and how much money they have, in order to further his goals. I think it's under Affordable NYC is what they've named themselves.
So when we start seeing the commercials on the Affordable NYC pay for this message.
It's been pretty telling that from the beginning, the real estate industry has been behind these plans. And that has raised a lot of eyebrows and some red flags for people, because they say, well, if real estate developers are gung-ho about this,
it's got to be bad for
maybe
New York.
It's not exactly so community-minded. And so just first blush right there, it's almost as if the administration has wanted to sort of quiet that support a little bit, because it looks bad for them if they are saying this is about affordability. Exactly. So that's part of who's in the mayor's corner. We should say that virtually every city council member is behind the mandatory inclusionary housing program. It's just a matter of what are the levels of affordability that are mandated in those apartments. And that's where the council now is going to tweak the proposal in the next month, 6 weeks, and come back with what they are going to push through. And the way this land use review process goes is whatever the council pushes through, the mayor either cannot accept it or it goes through. He doesn't get another swipe at
back
changes.
to the drawing board with it. So Danielle, you have been involved with the community boards intimately. You're out there. What's the feeling there? Do you think folks in the neighborhood feel that housing is coming for them, or we're going to be pushed out, specifically in the East New York context? Do they think finally my kids will get their own apartment and we can all stop living together, or no? It's
seem
spreading.
to have a little bit of an answer in mind.
I'm just asking. This is something like I was reading all this stuff last night, and I'm thinking, because if you look at the AMI and the levels, and some of them seem very low for certain developments, and you say, wow, who lives in the city currently and is making that amount of money and able to sustain themselves? And to me, it seems just like a kid who does live with his mom and just needs to get his own space. So who do they think these apartments are for in the community?
Well, I mean, there's this group, New Yorkers for Real Affordability, is that it?
I've seen their posters.
Yeah, so
Those names are all fairly interchangeable.
Yeah,
There's some
there's
for,
like-
some against.
They've got some great posters on Atlantic Avenue that I was rolling by.
So they had somebody who put out, I think it was an editorial recently, saying that she lives in Bushwick, and she lives with her children and her sister and her husband, and they subsist on her husband's income, bagging groceries, and he made something like it was less than $20,000 a year. And so, for them, they say there's a lot of people like that. Right. The East New York thing is interesting today, actually, because just this morning I noticed in the city record, the city just released their final environmental impact statement on East New York, which is essentially where they say, here's the bad things our plan might do.
Right.
When they did that for the citywide zoning, they essentially came away with our plan won't do anything bad. Yeah. It was like, we might make some noise when we're building things. But one of the things they were called out on was saying, this won't increase development, this won't increase density, which a lot of urban planners said that's a crazy thing to, right, by definition, your plan is supposed to do that. So I actually haven't had a chance to look through the document yet, but.
So it's almost
it's on the city record.
You have to back it.
Or anyone can go find it.
Let her digest the city record, then you can read her on DNA.
I think, you know, what you're getting at is this fear of gentrification, this fear of displacement that a lot of people have. Now, some people wonder, well, if I'm in East New York, where do I go from there?
Yeah.
I mean, there's almost nowhere else in the city to go where, so.
It's the last frontier.
And, you know, the administration's argument in response is that nobody's coming into East New York right now to build luxury apartments.
Right.
Anything that goes there is going to be built at moderate and low income levels, and that HPD, because you showed the billions of dollars in, that is money they say that's separate from MIH and new developer.
Just to keep HPD up and running and doing all the things they're doing.
Well, that's, and some of what they're doing is they're financing through developers that are not for-profit developers, not-for-profit developers.
Like the Fifth Avenue committees of the world.
Exactly, and then so they point out, they say that for places like East New York, they're coming in with more density, but a lot of it is going to be at the deeper levels of affordability.
Yeah.
That's their argument.
Well,
we have to see that actually
We'll keep
happen.
reading Gotham Gazette and DNA info to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Thank you both for being here. We definitely appreciate it, and we'll be watching. Well, 5 years ago, Nadia Lopez had a dream of becoming the principal of a stellar Brooklyn public school, one that would help transform middle school students into high-achieving scholars by creating an educational environment that's at once demanding, community-supported, and results-driven. Today, Mott Hall Bridges Academy is no dream, it's a vibrant reality in the heart of Brownsville. So how did it all happen? Well, through compassionate dedication, says Lopez. And right now, she's going to take us for a walk through her hallways.
So today, pretty much what we do is professional development. It's our way of getting our staff members acclimated to what the expectations will be for 2015-2016 school year. So everybody comes back together, and we only have one day to prepare for our scholars who are going to be entering the building tomorrow.
I don't know if I'm mentally prepared to start teaching again, but you know, days like today help. Just being motivated, getting those inspirational supports, reminding us why we chose this profession, what we want to do, having our own expectations, thinking about how we want to grow throughout this year helps me prioritize what I want to do with my scholars, what things are most important.
2015, 2016. We're going to be the top school. I'm not saying we're going to be #1, but we're not going to be ranked at the bottom. And our scholars will look like those scholars that you drew up there. Point blank, period. Because you all are a team. You all are Brownsville Brilliants. And you all are what we consider the ones that they need to be like. So you need to start acting like you're going to be great. Does that make sense? Any questions?
It's hard. It's not an easy job at all, but when you see scholars actually improving, even if it's getting a 55, moving up to 65, that's a big accomplishment, and it makes me feel accomplished because my students are actually doing better than when they came. It's not that you're there at 100, but any improvement, we should definitely celebrate.
I was going great, and then things happened. So, as some of you know, my mother passed when I was in 8th grade. Don't start, Dominique? So for me, it was like, I lost a mother. I told you, can I do this, Ms. Lopez?
You can do it, right? Because everybody in this room who was with you, right? Did you make it through?
I did.
Did you have a family here?
I did.
I've had children who's lost their parent in the morning, 6 o'clock, and still show up at 8 o'clock. I've had that happen not once, not twice, not 3 times. I've had it happen enough where I know that we're important enough for those children and we provide a stable environment, and they knew that their parents chose us because we would be there for them. So tomorrow we anticipate a large turnout that's gonna line the block and usher them in and just encourage them with great words of inspiration. Nathaniel, just walk on through, sir. Just walk on through. Yes, yes, yes. Good morning, Nicholas. Yes, good morning. This one. Good morning. He was like, what? Oh, good morning. Oh, how are you? Good, how are you? Good, good. Good morning. Hi, how are you, Rob? Pleasure to meet you. Okay, she'll be in good hands. She needs to pull the shirt down. All right? Kalia, good morning, honey. You want take her to see Mr. Chu. She doesn't have a uniform shirt. What are we working on? You really need to go to the bathroom, Cameron? Yeah. Yeah or yes?
Yeah.
Hi, good morning, Giselle. So, I don't know. I sent Randy to the house. One of my scholars, his name was Vidal, identified me as his greatest influence. Within 24 hours, 1 million people loved the idea. And from that story, we actually were able to raise $1.4 million for our scholars to go to Harvard, as well as provide summer programming and offer scholarships. So I'll tell her to call them directly as well, because I have no idea. So I really can't explain what the story is with Vidal. You know, there's the story of here's a young man who puts his principal on a international stage by saying that I inspire him. But every single child at Mount Harper's Academy has a story. And while he seems like the champion and he seems like he should be the person running for the presidency because he gave America hope, the reality is that there are challenges that exist, especially from a young man who comes from Brownsville. Education is being provided to him and being paid for. That should be the ultimate priority.
What I have nothing like money. I have nothing. I have nothing. What I have, that was the last of me. I have nothing more.
Nothing speaks volumes like a mother who's lost a child within 24 hours showing up. He doesn't attend the school anymore. She doesn't have a reason or owe me anything, but she showed up. I could be angry, because the idea is that we tell our children to stay away from certain places. He wasn't malicious, but she knew that the neighborhood was bad and there were people who didn't care about his life. And so she has to bury her son next to her other son who died the same way. Make your voice strong for your boys. You understand? You have to hold the politicians accountable. You need to go to each and every one of them. And now you have to become that face, because there's so much about gun violence, but you don't have any closure. They don't find the people who have done it, and so you're forced to have to be strong. You sit here, don't leave. I have to go, these little pick-me's here, the new ones. Don't give me trouble. Tyler, class, Tyler, class. I need you to stay focused. It just makes me think, how do I continue to let my boys know that they matter? How do I continue to let my girls know that they matter, right? And so immediately I thought about, we're gonna start this great program. We're gonna start up I Matter. We're gonna come together with Brooklyn Combine, and we're gonna create an initiative around instilling in our young men and providing them with the mentorship that they need to be reminded that they truly indeed matter, because a mother can't do it by herself. She can't.
We're in Brooklyn Borough Hall, but literally right across the street is a court building, right? And we're having this conversation about law and justice, and we're going to be framed around policing.
On the panel, we had a police officer, 2 attorneys, a community advocate and activist. Myself is also who moderates a community advocate and advocate. It's also somebody who's had real experience being in the criminal justice system. So they had a panoramic perspective on what's happening, because that's what they see in Brownsville. But they had opportunity to engage with us who are in these positions of power, positions of influence, to see that, one, they can talk to us, that we're accessible, right? But also that we value what they got to say. I think oftentimes in the communities that they're at, they feel like the police officer, the guy who's a community advocate on TV, or the person they see in the news or what have you, are people that's far off from them.
Inform yourself, speak to people, ask questions, critique, read, watch, and figure out what your goals are. Like, you have a better shot at being a scientist, a physicist, any of the things that we do in this panel than you have at being fairy tale rapper with fairy tale girlfriend, wife.
You want these kids to take hold of their own narrative. Traditionally, we don't get to control our narrative, and we don't get to control our lives. We don't get to control our communities. And there needs to be an empowering conversation and discourse and action to make people realize that these kids can control their narrative.
Unfortunately, this area of Brooklyn, most men of color, when they're here, it's not for good reasons. It's because the court is up the block, or central bookings, the stop before Rikers. So to be in this area where so many important decisions get made, and right here in the home of the borough president, Eric Adams, it's a great opportunity for these youngsters to kind of escape their environment, because sometimes all they know is a 6-block radius in a very unfortunate area.
It's an intergenerational thing. There has to be the young with the old, and the in-between, because even when I went through a Rites of Passage program, there were the elders, but there was a big brother who was right next to me pulling me through, who I could relate to the most.
Every single morning, my scholars read an affirmation in which they say, "We are the Mott Hall Bridges Academy scholars. We pledge to respect ourselves and the adults in our community, practice kindness to those around us, show enthusiasm for the opportunities ahead of us, strive for exemplary achievement in all that we do, practice good citizenship, and work hard to be the best scholars that we can be." These are the things that make you successful as a scholar here, but it's what takes you beyond the school walls and makes you a success in life.
That is powerful stuff, and while we know that the schools are on break right now, that is a lifestyle job if ever there was one. I bet if you call her on her phone right now, she would answer at her desk. Very well-deserved praise. Good on you, Nadia Lopez, who happens to be one of the 50 national finalists for, there it is, Global Teacher Prize from the Varkey Foundation. And you might have also seen her on the BET, where she got an Outstanding Achievement Award from the folks at Black Girls Rock. And yes, she do. Well, it's not every alumnus who goes back to visit his old high school sporting a Super Bowl ring, but that's definitely a right earned by former NFL champ Otis Wilson, who starred on one of the greatest sports team ever, the Chicago Bears of the mid-'80s. But his career began right here in Brooklyn at Thomas Jefferson High. And a week or so ago, he went back to school.
That old saying, when you're having fun, it goes by like that. It goes by real quick, guys. When you're playing with guys like Walter Payton, Dan Hampton, Richard Dent, Wilbur Marshall. I mean, I can name a whole lot of Hall of Famers. You can't do anything but have fun. I mean, you had to keep your head on the swivel, and you went out there and you played, and you hit people, you dominated people, you took people's will. That's what it was about. Who was going to dominate and impose their will on the next guy? When I was playing here, we had 60 or 70 guys come out to play football. And you see the numbers that you're dealing with now. The small numbers. It was an exciting time because, Mo Finkelstein was a well-renowned coach, and, they had the undefeated team in '71, and you knew I was ready to play football. I was excited, and I wanted to test my ability against the best, and I always wanted to be the best, and in order to be the best, you have to beat the best, and you have to be with the best. When you step out on the field, we expect nothing but commitment and playing together. But it all starts right here by what you guys are doing today. You guys are a special group. You have to make that commitment. When you sit home, you decide what you want to do. And I thank God. This has been a great ride.
Had 13 quarterback sacks for a team that proved one of the biggest blowouts in Super Bowl history.
Dave, I want to thank you for this great moment, this great honor. As I look up there and see all the names, walking through the halls bring back so many great memories of my youthful days, not really understanding what was going to be happening, but I knew one thing: excellence, commitment, and hard work. And through those 4 years that I was here, gave me the foundation to go to the University of Louisville, play in the NFL for 10 years, win 1 Super Bowl. I could have came in and gave him the politician speech, but I'll be doing him the injustice. They got to understand, it takes work, it takes commitment, it takes each other in that room, and you got to figure out which direction you want to go in. Woo! Some things just don't die.
We're not doing this because we're greedy. The Bears are doing it to feed the needy. We didn't come here to look for trouble. We just come here to do the Super Bowl shot.
This is Speedy Willie, and I'm world class. I like running, but I love to get the pass. I practice all day and dance all night. I gotta get ready for the Sunday fight.
What a great time that was. The 86 Bears, man, they gave us a lot of laughs, a lot of fun, and they were the most competitive defense I think the NFL has ever produced. All right, we've got another champion with us live. In the 1980s, Michael Bent won 4 Golden Glove championships, and in 1993, he won the World Heavyweight Championship. Later, he played another champ, Sonny Liston, in the film Ali. Michael Bent, welcome to BK Live.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Man, I'll tell you. We got a lot to talk about. All right, where are we going to go? I'm going to go how it all started, because you came here from England, right? And then you moved here to the States. You moved here to the New York area, Queens, Brooklyn.
Cambridge Heights. My mom and dad's Jamaican, left Jamaica when they got married. I was born in London, came here in '72, and started boxing when I was 10 years old. I was a Yankees fan, but like my dad was a big boxing fan. So
what took you to boxing, though?
My dad. And as most people know who are Jamaicans, like if your dad said, be a dressmaker, you'd be a dressmaker. Right. My dad said be a boxer. So I boxed. Didn't like it though, because you can hit. Right. Who likes getting hit? I didn't like getting hit. So one day I went home and said, Dad, check us out. I don't like this. He was upset. But like, you know, I played baseball for like 4 or 5 years, and I had a mentor who was my first boxing mentor, a guy named George Pimentel. He was like 5 or 6 years older than me when I was boxing. And
which gym did you box out of also?
Was
it in Queens?
The PAL.
Okay.
The 110th precinct in Queens, Fletcher Meadow Park. So this guy, George Pimentel, his dream was to make the U.S. boxing team. And he made the team. And remember the flight that went to Poland and crashed? Yeah. He was on that team. So I cut school that day. I went to Aviation High School and cut school. And my brother had a paper route, grabbed some papers. And I went upstairs and was reading the magazine, the news article about this flight going down. And my guy was on the plane. So at that moment, I said, you know what? I know I'm a fighter. So I'm going to dedicate my career to George. And bro, that like took me around the world. And
you had a hell of an amateur career. I mean, you fought on a Jamaican Olympic team,
that's right.
You won 4 or 5 national titles, won the Golden Glove championship 4 times during the 80s.
Right.
What was that like? Explain how that also changed your life, winning those titles.
I think like, you know, no boxer fights because, you know, he has a functional, you know, upbringing, you know what I mean? You fight from someplace. Ray Robinson fought from like, you know, dysfunction, you know, victimization, you know, Riddick Bowe fought from that. You know, everyone fights from like, you know, that place of pain, right? But that was the place to express it in a boxing gym. And once again, like, you know, I wouldn't have been successful without having that guy, Georgie Pimentel, in my memory, because he inspired all that. You know, I wanted to win 4 Golden Gloves, 5 Nationals, blah, blah, blah. But like, you know, I always wanted to win 4 Golden Gloves because George used to always say like, you know, that Mike, you know, the great New York boxers win 4 Golden Gloves. And I was like in the back of my mind since I was like 10 years old. And I achieved that.
And fighting for those titles, especially the Garden at that time, and the Garden was really at its height.
Magical. Right? You know, it was epic. I fought to Alex Stewart my second year. We fought this hellacious finals match, 85,000. It felt like 19,000 people. Doesn't get any better than that, man. I was terrified, but like we banked it out. And I came out like, you know, victorious. And I fought Ike Padilla in the 87 Golden Gloves finals for my 4th championship, and that was magical, man.
You also went on to win the heavyweight championship in 1993, knocking out Tommy Morrison.
Right, yeah.
How did becoming heavyweight champion, how did that change your life?
Good question.
That's huge.
Yeah, but like, you know, I've always been in conflict. I was always in conflict with boxing because, like, you know, when your parent says do something and you go against the grain and do it anyway, it's just, you know, there's conflict there. So I was in conflict, but like, you know, I knew that fighting Morrison was my chance to validate myself with my peers, with Roy Jones, because like, you know, I've known Roy since I was like...
Who were your peers at that time?
Oh, Roy Jones, Evander Holyfield, Riddick Bowe, you know, these guys
and that was at the height of the heavyweight division.
Exactly. Ray Mercer.
When you look at the heavyweight division today, man, what goes through your mind?
Honestly...
And the heavyweights seem so much bigger today. I mean,
they're bigger but less athletic. You know, I mean, the guys can punch, but I don't see any nuances.
You know, that's what's missing.
Sure, right. That's right. Sure, and step back. One of my mentors in boxing was a guy named Georgie Benton. This guy was like Einstein, you know, and this guy like groomed me.
He also handled Ali.
That's right.
Joe Frazier.
That's right. Jimmy Young. Evander Holyfield.
Philadelphia.
That's right. Georgie's masterpiece was a guy named Pernell Whitaker. You know.
You know, we got to also talk about that Ali film. In 2001, you played Sonny Liston.
Yes.
How did that also change you, man? I mean, getting into the life of Sonny Liston, because you had to take on his character,
aura,
right?
Sure. And I found, like, you know, that digging into the unsaids, you know, digging into the stuff like, you know, that made Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston had a hellacious thing with his father, relationship with him. So I dug into that because I can relate to that, right? And you know, it's not in the script, but like, you know, I gotta dig into it. And when the man says action, when Michael Mann says action, I'm Sonny Liston because I can, like, you know, find that place. And if you're Will Smith you say something like, snarky to me, I'm gonna dig into you as somebody listening.
Right.
The work is
you
done.
big bad, I want you, big bad, I'm coming out to get you.
Right.
Now you might have flashback, right?
And my response was, I can't say it on TV, but right. And that's how Sonny felt about Ali. Or Cassius Clay at that time. Sure. But it comes from like a dark place. And we have to we can't deny that in ourselves. Boxers can. Ali didn't. He came from that stuff. Frazier did as well. Yeah?
Sonny, I mean, as far as also that particular film, I'm sorry. That particular film, it was so impactful, especially during that time. Ali fought him twice. He fought him in Miami, then he fought him in Maine.
That's right. Those are epic fights, because those are two epic characters. One is a quote-unquote good guy. One's a quote-unquote good guy who's a bad guy.
Mike, also, in April, you're going to be honored, right, with the rest of the Golden Glovers, right?
Yes.
Explain that, Michael.
Right. Wow. Next to landing the Ali gig, next to the birth of my son, that's probably the biggest thrill for me, to be inducted with guys like Riddick Bowe, Jerry Cooney, Chuck Wepner, and I forget the other persons as well. But that's beyond an honor, it's.
And also, you're in that class with Howard Davis, the late Howard Davis that we lost about a month ago.
Right, that's right. I mean, those guys are once again icons, and those guys, any fighter who is great from New York has to win the gloves. Now, if you want to be like an icon, you win it 4 times. So I'm just
good there. What are you doing now? I know you're acting.
I'm acting, directing a play in New York in a couple of months. We're in talks with a media company to develop something for them as well, and I'm writing as well. Just trying to search this thing called life, man. Because that's what we do as boxers. We search ourselves, and we search the other fighter. That's what it's about.
Mike, I'm out of time.
Are we done?
We're done.
That was 10 minutes, bro?
That's it, man.
Jeez,
that's all she gave me.
Thank you.
I got to have you back, though, again. We will. I will have you back.
I love that,
bro.
bro.
All right? Cool?
Thank you. Absolutely.
All right. Next up, from slam dunks to poetry slams, but first from our music show B-side, here's 7FN singing about what every playoff team is fighting for in the tournament, the right to remain.
Come on, y'all. Figure Negro, they can't see us. This is one thing they fear in the world. A 7-figure Negro. Negro, they can't see us. Check it. Yo, check it. Yo, dinero to catch the profit. 7 figures the target. Powerfully we strong arm it. Don't ride if you not on it. Quadruple catch you born with. Don King, so bring the horns in. Times every blade of grass. After the stats you stepped on lawns with. I don't get along with boys who think that more. I'm more on that more. Louis V. Couture. Stagnant goals I'm bored with. I'm more on that world tour. It's the only thing passive is the cash when we're snoring. 7-figure Negro. They can't see us. Check it. Yo. Check it. Yo. 7-figure Negro. They can't see us. Check it. Yo. Check it. Yo. I eat food, get it. Minimum wage is 7 digits.
All right. Well, a week from tonight, our neighbors at the Greenlight Bookstore just down the street will hold their next quarterly poetry salon. You're about to meet the salon's founder, curator, and host, a woman who has run or participated in writing workshops and poetry readings in venues ranging from colleges and theaters to teen centers, detention centers, and, of course, bars, not to mention a few tattoo parlors in there. We're delighted to welcome Angel Nafis to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So you're the poetry lady.
Oh, I am. That's what they call me. That's what they be saying.
You started a lot of stuff over here at Greenlight. It's a great bookstore, and you help them to get better.
Yes, I mean, they're excellent in and of their own entity. Greenlight Bookstore is like an incredible bookstore. I've worked at bookstores for the greater part of my adult life. So
Really?
yeah, this is like my
bookstore
spot.
girl.
This is like my sweet spot.
Okay.
But the co-owners are really great and have been very supportive. And one of the co-owners, Jessica, she's actually also the events coordinator. So she sort of approached me about the possibility of doing something like that because she knew that my expertise was in poetry, and she wanted to have something specifically vibrant having to do with poetry in the store. So that was like back in 2011, and it's just been growing since then, and it's got quite a following.
Way to go, Jessica, promoting from within there.
Yeah.
So tell us about what informs your work. What is your take on poetry?
So you mean outside of the salon, just like the practice of poetry in
the
general?
actual practice of being a poet
Yes.
in 2016 and beyond.
And beyond. Well, I think first and foremost, the practice of poetry at its best is like one that is an excavation of the self and like stories. So almost functioning almost as like a dividing up of the stories of your own self, your communities, where you come from, your lineage, your legacy. It kind of almost functions like a social science in some ways, I think. You know, like it's got like an autobiographical feel to it. You're kind of, you know, almost like archaeology. You're like digging up sort of your own stories.
Okay, that being said, what is the bridge between that 16-year-old person with the little notebooks scribbling in their room by themselves or on the back of the bus to like Lauryn Hill pouring her heart out into a genius album?
Yeah, well, I was one of those
poetry to music.
16-year-old nerds writing in the back of the bus.
I didn't say nerd, mind you. These are the poets'
Nerd,
words.
for sure. Self-appointed, for sure. Yeah, I think that it sort of starts with. I mean, I wasn't a very strong student in like my beginning years of high school. I think because I'm a huge reader. I've always been super avid. And then I think there's sort of like a trickle-off effect that happens when you hit high school. And the curriculum is sort of very institutionalized, and it's very sort of rigid. There's like a rigidity around the sort of canon that is very like supremacist in nature. And so I think what happens is that kids pull back because kids have a, I don't know, can I curse? No. Kids have like a...
You're a poet, use your words.
Kids have a BS detector.
Okay.
And it starts ringing off the minute you start sort of forcing other people's stories on them or narrative that isn't theirs. I think kids pull back and they want to tell their own stories. So I think that leads to the kid riding in the back of the bus, and you get strong with that. And that is a story that is so unique and personal to yourself, but it also speaks to the general public. That then if you get like a strength in craft, then you end up being sort of those, like as you say, Lauryn Hill or like Sonia Sanchez, who was here the other night. You start being So you start sort of getting in that practice.
So who are some of the authors who participate in your salon?
Well, we've had like tons and tons of folks. We've been very lucky and blessed with the folks. We've had like, you know, Patricia Smith, who's like, you know, the sort of legend. And you're talking about who's coming up, or are you talking about in the past?
Well, give me, you know, it's only an hour, sure.
Okay, so
some of the big
luckily,
names
Well, we've had Patricia Smith, we've had Willie Perdomo, we've had Jean Amber Lee, we've had tons of folks come through who are in the NYC community as a whole wide, and then also people traveling in. This next week, we've got some amazing authors coming in. We're really excited.
This is who we're looking at out there.
This is their you know, incredulously beautiful faces. We've got Jay Deshpande, we've got Natalie Diaz, we've got Tiffany Yannick, and we've got C.E. Bain. So we're very excited to have all four of these folks come in and like drop some incredible wisdom on the folks.
How do you pick them?
How do I pick them? So
who's in town? Come on by.
I mean, it's a mixture of things. So because, you know, first and foremost, we're a bookstore and we have like free events, you know, all of our events are free, so that's like why we're able to do these things. Is people come in and they buy so much book, there's so much support and love from the community. So we try to have authors come in who've got new collections coming out, like that there's a lot of buzz around that people are very excited about. And all of these authors have like newer books or are just like generally popular, beloved storytellers. So all four of these folks. So we pick it that way. So it's got to be like a newer collection or recent, you know, contemporary. And then our other thing is that we want our readers in the series to be as sort of like ever-changing, diverse, and vibrant as our actual poetry section is in the bookstore. If you go to a lot of bookstores in the city, you'll find it. It looks like, honestly, it looks like an AP English class, dead
society.
white
Yeah.
dude sort of moratorium.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's something that we pride ourselves on because our staff is so eclectic that we
with
have.
it. They're
super with it. And so our section itself reads like the city.
Well,
and so we want
speaking
our
of those
salon to
living poets and looking like the city, what are you going to do for us today?
I'm gonna read a poem. I have a series of poems that you know what odes are? Odes are like love letters to things. I have a series of odes to things I don't like in an attempt to be optimistic. So I have this ode for y'all that I'm gonna read today. It's an ode to voicemail, which I really dislike. I never check it.
All right, break us off.
Break
this
you
is
off.
the ode to voicemail.
This is the ode to voicemail.
Go, Angel.
Ode to voicemail. You dark hand that reaches starch through hot wire to press against my neck. Sterile nurse that tells me how many days, weeks, months since my last visit to witness what in my unyielding buzz I have missed. Place I avoid, purgatory of all my familiars. I do not hate you, but want to know so completely who I am away from, or what part of myself I have left to collect dust. Your names are Debt Recovery, and Sally Mae, and hospital results, and are you on your way? Still, even the messages I don't want tell me who I am. Hi, Angel. Hello, Angel. Greetings, this is Miss Nafis. My name hugged up against a salutation. Your best gift, though, remains the way you pull my dad's voice, taut with eternity's hands. Forever I have the fruit. Salam alaikum, Nafis. Just checking on my littlest one. And two, when he believes he's hung up or doesn't know he's called at all, the sounds of him, casual and kind. Is that a waiter he's talking to? A postal worker laughing and calling him sir? Praise infinity, the plain sounds of him living and living.
All right.
Yeah.
Angel Nafis.
That's that.
You
Thanks
can
for
call her
having
on
me.
her cell phone.
Come to the salon.
Or come to the salon.
Come to the salon. It's
more
free.
appropriately.
We have free wine, complimentary wine. We have cupcakes. There's going to be
shucky-ducky.
red
What day?
authors. It's Wednesday, February 24th.
24th. Okay, Wednesday, February
7:30 p.m.
24th at 7:30. We'll see you at Greenlight
See
Bookstore
you.
on Fulton
Come
Ave.
through.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.